Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture 19 of data security and encryption, and in this lecture we are going to discuss a fundamental concept in cryptography named as public key. So in this lecture we are going to discuss about the principles of public key crypto systems and how public key systems work, their applications and requirements to build a public key crypto system. And finally, there will be a discussion about attacking a public key crypto system. The public key crypto systems have been the greatest achievement in the history of cryptography. So from its earliest beginning to the modern times, virtually all cryptographic systems have been based on the elementary tools of substitution and permutation. Public key cryptography provides a radical structure from that all gone before. So from one thing, public key algorithms are based on mathematical functions rather than substitution and permutation. More importantly, public key cryptography is asymmetric, involving the use of two separate keys in contrast to symmetric encryption which only used one key. So the use of two keys has profound consequences in the areas of confidentiality, key distribution, and authentication. So the public key cryptographic systems are based on number theory. To gain a full appreciation of public key algorithms, some understanding of number theory is required, which we covered in the lecture number 4 and 5. So this table defines some key terms about public key encryptions. So first of all, it is based on asymmetric keys. Asymmetric keys are two related keys, a public key and a private key, that are used to perform complementary operations such as encryption and decryption or signature generation and signature verification. The important things are there are two keys, public key and private key. There is a public key certificate as well, which defines a digital document issued and digitally signed by the private key of a certification authority that binds the name of the subscriber to the public key. The certificate indicates that the subscriber identified in the certificate has the sole control and the access corresponding to the private key. That means if you have a public key certificate and you provide the name of the user, only that user will have the access with the private key to the document or any transferred information. Similarly, there will be a public key cryptographic algorithm. A cryptographic algorithm that uses again two related keys, a public key and a private key. The two keys have the property that deriving the private key from the public key is computationally infeasible. That means if you have the public key, it is very difficult for an attacker to derive the private key. Public key infrastructure is a set of policies, processes, server platforms, software, and workstations used for the purpose of administering certificates and public-private keys, including the ability to issue, maintain, and revoke public key certificates. So it is a central database to manage the private and public keys along with other encryption and decryption algorithms and policies. Before proceeding, we should mention there are several common misconceptions concerning the public key encryption. One of such misconceptions is that the public key encryption is more secure from cryptanalysis than symmetric encryption. In fact, the security of any encryption scheme depends on the length of the key and the computational work involved in the breaking a cipher. There is nothing in principle about either symmetric or public key encryption that makes one superior to another from the point of view of resisting an attack. A second misconception is that the public key encryption is a general purpose technique that has made symmetric encryption obsolete. On the contrary, because the computational overhead of current public key encryption schemes, there seems no foreseeable likelihood that symmetric encryption will be abandoned. Finally, there is a feeling that key distribution is trivial when using public key encryption compared to the cumbersome handshaking involved with the key distribution centers for the symmetric encryption. In fact, some form of protocol is also needed, generally involving a central agent, and the procedures involved are not simpler nor any more efficient than those are in the symmetric encryption. So the concept of public key cryptography evolved from an attempt to attack two of the most difficult problems associated with the symmetric encryption. The first problem is the key distribution, and it states that how to have the secure communication in general without having to trust a key distribution communication with your key. Key distribution under symmetric encryption requires either that two communicators already share a key which is somehow has been distributed to them, or they can use the key distribution center from where they can acquire the key of to decrypt the cipher text. So key distribution is a problem in the public key system. The next most difficult problem associated with the symmetric encryption is the digital signature, that how to verify that a message comes intact from the claimed sender. This is referred as digital signature. So if the use of cryptography was to become widespread, not just for the military situations but for the commercial and private purposes, then electronic messages and documents would need to be equivalent of the signature used for the paper document. So Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman from Stanford University achieved a breakthrough in 1976 by coming up with a method that addressed both problems and was radically different from all previous approaches to the cryptography. Let me reiterate that asymmetric algorithm rely on the one key for encryption and a different key but which it will be related key for the decryption. So these algorithms have the following important characteristics. Number one, that these algorithms are which have such properties, it is computationally infeasible to determine the decryption key if you have the knowledge of the cryptographic algorithm and the encryption key. So either of the two related keys can be used for encryption with the other used for decryption. A public key encryption scheme has six ingredients. Number one, it has a plain text, which is a readable message or the data that is fed is to as input to the algorithm. Secondly, there is the encryption algorithm which performs the various transformations on the plain text. Then there will be a public key and a private key, which are used for the encryption or the decryption. The exact transformation performed by the algorithm depends on these public or private keys. The output is referred as the ciphertext, and it is a scrambled message from the plaintext applied applied using an private or public key to an encryption algorithm. And finally, there will be a decryption algorithm which accepts the ciphertext and the matching key to produce the original plain text back. The essential steps are described in this example. So each user generates a pair of keys to be used for encryption. For example, in this case, we have number of users and we have each user generating a pair of keys to use for encryption and decryption. So each user places one of the two keys in public register or the other accessible file. This is referred as public key. For example, in this case we have the user Alice public key referred as PU of A. The companion key or the private key is kept secret. So each user maintains a collection of public keys obtained from others. So if in this case a user Bob wishes to send a conditional message to Alice as depicted in second example, Bob encrypts the message using the Alice public key. When Alice receives the message, she decrypts it using her private key. No other recipients can decrypt the message because only Alice knows Alice's private key. So with this approach, all participants have access to the public key, and the private keys are generated locally by each participant and therefore need never be distributed. As long as the user's private key remains protected and secret, incoming communication is secure. At any time, system can change its private key and publish the companion public key to replace its old public key. This table summarizes some of the important aspects of symmetric and public encryption keys. To discriminate between the two, we refer to the key used in symmetric encryption as secret key and in asymmetric encryption as public key or and the private key. The private key is kept secret in both cases, but it is referred as private key rather than a secret key to avoid confusion with the symmetric encryption. Though the conventional encryption, such as symmetric encryption, needed to work the same algorithm with the same key is used for the encryption and decryption algorithm. So this involves all the algorithms that we have discussed so far. And in this conventional encryption, the sender and the receiver must share the algorithm and the key. And it is needed for the security that the key must be secret. It must be impossible for at least impractical to decipher a message if the key is kept secret. And the knowledge of algorithm plus the sample of ciphertext must be insufficient to determine the key. On the other hand, in the public key encryption, one algorithm is used for encryption and a related algorithm for decryption with a pair of keys, one for the encryption and one for the decryption. The sender and receiver must each have one of the matched pair of the keys. This is not necessary to have the same one. What is needed for security? That one of the two keys must be kept secret, private or a public key. It must be impossible for at least impractical to decipher a message if one of the keys is kept secret, and the knowledge of the algorithm plus one of the keys plus samples of the ciphertext must be insufficient to determine the other key. So take a closer look at the essential elements of the public key encryption scheme using this figure. There is some source named as source A that produces a message in the plain text X, and which is a stream. It is producing a stream cipher, and it will be combination of number of sub plain texts. The M elements of the X are the letters in some finite alphabet. The message is intended for the destination B. B generates a related pair of keys, a public key PUB and a private key PRB. It is only the private key is only known to the receiver B, whereas the public key is publicly available and it is accessible by the resource A. So with this message, the encryption key PU of B as an input, A forms the ciphertext Y, which is a combination of a PU key and input text X and some encryption algorithm to produce the ciphertext Y. The intended receiver in possession of the matching private key PRB is able to invert the transformation using the decryption algorithm, the private key, and the ciphertext to produce the original text X. So consider the role of the attacker here. Observing Y have and having access to public key but no access to private key or the input X, the attacker must attempt to recover X and the private key. It is assumed that the attacker does not have the knowledge of the encryption algorithm or the decryption algorithm. So if the attacker is interested only in one message, then the focus of the attacker is to recover the message by generating a plain text estimate referred as X bar. However, in many cases, the attacker is interested in being able to read future messages as well, in which case the attacker can attempt to recover the private key by generating a possible private key P or B bar. So as mentioned earlier, either of the two related keys can be used for encryption, with the other being used for decryption. This enables a rather different cryptographic scheme to be implemented. So whereas the scheme illustrated in the last example provides confidentiality, this scheme shows the public key encryption provides authentication. As in this case, the key is generated by the source A and the private key is used to encrypt the value and the public key is used to decrypt the value. So A prepares a message to B and encrypts it using its private key before transmitting it. B can decrypt the message using A's public key. Because the message was encrypted using A's private key, only A could have prepared the message. Therefore, the entire encrypted message serves as digital signature. So in addition, it is impossible to alter the message without access to A's private key. So the message is authenticated both in terms of source and in terms of data integrity. So this typical example is used for the authentication. So whenever an sender wants to identify its identity, it is done by using a private key and sharing a public key with the receiver. So with this public key, the attacker cannot access the private key, and the server will be able to verify that the request was generated from a verified source. However, if you consider that in this case and even in the previous case, the encryption process depicted does not provide confidentiality. This means that the message being sent is safe from alteration. That means the attacker cannot change the message, but it can listen to the message. This is obvious in the case of signature based on a portion of the message, because the rest of the message is transmitted in the clear form. So you can any observer can decrypt the message by using the sender's public key. So public key also provides the authentication and secrecy. It is, however, possible to provide both these, uh, for example, the authentication function and the confidentiality, by the double use of public key scheme, such as depicted in this case. We begin therefore by encrypting a message using the sender's private key with the input of plain text. This provides the input with the digital signature. Next, we encrypt again using the receiver's public key, as in this case PUB. The final ciphertext can be decrypted only by the intended receiver. The receiver who alone has the matching private key and public key. Thus the confidentiality is provided. However, the disadvantages of this approach is that the public key algorithm, which is complex, and it must be exercised 4 times rather than 2 in each communication, such as here and here. However, we need to clarify the one aspect of public key crypticism that is otherwise likely to lead to the confusion. Public key systems are characterized by the use of cryptographic algorithm with two keys, one held private and one available publicly. Depending upon the application, the sender uses either the sender's private key or the receiver's public key, or both, to perform some type of cryptographic function. So in broad terms, public key cryptographic systems can be classified into three categories. First of all, encryption decryption. The sender encrypts a message with the recipient's public key, and the recipient decrypts the message with the recipient's private key. Next, digital signatures. The sender signs a message with its private key to provide a digital signature. Signing is achieved by a cryptographic algorithm applied to the message or to a small block of data that is a function of this message. Finally, the other category is key exchange, that two sides cooperate to exchange a session key, which is secret key for symmetric encryption generated for the use of particular transaction or a session, and this key is valid for a short period of time. However, some algorithms are suitable for all three applications, whereas others can be used only for one or two. So this table indicates the applications supported by the algorithm that will be discussed in the upcoming lectures. So the first algorithm is RSA, which will be discussed in the next lecture, and it provides encryption and decryption. It can also be used for digital signatures and key exchanges. In the next few lectures, we will discuss about the elliptic curve algorithm, which is also used for all three purposes. However, Diffie-Hellman algorithm is only used for key exchange, whereas the DSS algorithms can all be used for the digital signatures. The cryptographic systems illustrated in the slide number 4 to 7 depend on a cryptographic algorithm based on the two related keys. The Diffie and Hellman postulated the system without demonstrating such algorithms exist. However, they did lay out the conditions that such algorithms may fulfill. So conditions that these algorithms must fulfill are as under. So the algorithm for an algorithm, it is computationally easy for a party B to generate a pair of public key PUB, and it should also be computationally easy for the sender A knowing the public key and the message to be encrypted to generate the corresponding cipher text. The algorithm must be computationally easy for the receiver B to decrypt the resulting ciphertext using the private key to recover the original message. The algorithm must also be computationally infeasible for an attacker knowing the public key to determine the private key. And the algorithm must be computationally infeasible for an attacker knowing the public key and the ciphertext to recover its original message. So the two keys can be applied in either order. So before elaborating on why the requirements are so formidable, let us first recast them. The requirements boil down to the need of a trapdoor one-way function. A one-way function is one that maps the domain into a range such that every function value has a unique inverse, which is with the condition that the calculation of the function is very easy, whereas the calculation of the inverse is infeasible. It is stated that if we encrypt the message of x using the function f, the cipher generation of ciphertext is very easy. However, the reverse method is infeasible. Generally, easy is defined as to mean a problem that can be solved in polynomial time as function of input length. Such algorithms are said to be belong from the class of P polynomials. The term infeasible is a much fuzzier concept. In general, we can say that the problem is infeasible if the effort to solve it grows faster than a polynomial time as a function of input size. So a trapdoor one-way function is a family of invertible function fk such that generation of a ciphertext y using the function on x is easy if the key and input plain text or noun. Similarly, generation of plain text from the ciphertext is easy if the value of key and the plain text are known. On the other hand, generation of the plain text is infeasible if value of y is known but the value of key is not known. So a practical general public key scheme depends on a suitable trapdoor one-way function. So as with the symmetric key encryption, a public key encryption scheme is vulnerable to a brute force attack, and you can countermeasure it using the large keys. However, there is a trade-off to be considered. Public key systems depend on the use of some sort of invertible mathematical function. The complexity of calculating this function may not scale linearly with the number of bits in the key but grow more rapidly than that. Therefore, the key size must be large enough to make brute force attack impractical. Similarly, on the other hand, key size must be small enough for the practical encryption and decryption. Key sizes that have been proposed result in encryption-decryption speeds but that are slow for general purpose usage. So the another aspect is public key encryption is currently confined to key management and signature applications only. Another form of attack is to find some way to compute the private key given the public key. To date, it has been mathematically proven that this form of attack is infeasible for particular public key algorithms. Finally, there can be a probable message attack that is much similar to a guessing attack, and this attack can be thwarted by appending some random bits to simple messages. This concludes today's lecture, and in this lecture we discussed or introduced ourselves to the public key crypto systems, and we overviewed some application of public key crypto systems and some categories of applications and some different algorithms that how these public key encryption crypto systems are applied to a diverse range of applications. Similarly, we also viewed some requirements for public key encryptions and some attacks on the public key cryptanalysis. If you want to read more, you can read the chapter 9 of the recommended book, or you can ask me any question. Thank you very much.